Our movie today begins in a serene church setting where Jacob, the dedicated pastor, is delivering a preachment to his congregation. Once the service concludes, he and his wife Anne greet the fellow church members. During this exchange, a young girl named Amelia specifically requests Jacob's spiritual assistance for her alcoholic mother. After the church activities were over, Amelia wanders through the town until dusk sets in. At this point, an eerie voice begins to call out her name, and she's eventually confronted and attacked by a mysterious figure lurking in the shadows. The narrative then shifts to the next day, where Anne is going about her daily morning routine. Upon hearing the unsettling news of Amelia's sudden disappearance, she quickly informs Jacob. They soon find themselves in a meeting with the local sheriff at the church, and the sheriff suggests that Amelia might have simply ran away due to her mother's excessive drinking. Annie, however, is quick to jump to Amelia's defense, asserting that the young girl will never abandon her mom, especially given her vulnerable state. As night falls, the couple host a dinner gathering inviting Jacob's brother Bob and his wife Carol. The next morning, Anne reveals to Jacob that Tom, an old boyfriend of hers, will be coming to town to supervise the construction of a new gin mill. This revelation visibly concerns Jacob, given Tom's history with Anne. When Anne and Tom eventually meet, they spend some time catching up on life's twists and turns, and Tom couldn't help but wonder how Anne, once a wild and adventurous spirit, ended up marrying the steady but predictable Jacob. Not to mention him being a literal stuck-up pastor. Yeah, she explains that Jacob provided her with the much-needed emotional support during a crucial period in her life, particularly when she lost her mom. The two decide to visit the site of the upcoming gin mill, where Tom confesses that he has accepted a job primarily to be near Anne. Caught in the moment, they share a passionate kiss, but just then, Anne hears her name being whispered in the wind, startling both of them. They descend to investigate and stumble upon a large coffin-like crate that Anne is certain wasn't there before. Ignoring the foreboding atmosphere, they continue their romantic flame by sitting on the crate and sharing another kiss. Then suddenly, Anne is struck by a wave of guilt, and she tells Tom that she can't betray her marriage to Jacob. The moment she tells him this, something inside the crate begins to stir. Curious, Tom pries it open, only to be met with a swarm of vicious rats that attack him, ultimately leading to his death. Anyways, as Annie turns to flee, a shadowy figure with vampiric trails swoops down on her, marking a chilling turn of events. In the evening, Jacob becomes increasingly anxious as Anne arrives home later than usual. Her response to his concern is unusually cold, and she heads straight to bed. Once in the bathroom, Anne is horrified to see that she's covered in blood. The following morning presents a new Anne, one filled with an extraordinary level of energy. She breezes through her morning stretches, but notably skips making breakfast, which is a very unusual move on her part. Jacob comes down from work to find Anne transformed, and she's wearing a stunning dress and has styled her hair differently, and she surprises him by asking him to go out for dinner. During their dinner outing, Annie shows no interest in eating, and instead she seems strangely entranced by the sound of Jacob's heartbeat and the rush of his blood through his veins. Their tension escalates the next morning when Jacob confronts her about her recent odd behavior. Ignoring Jacob's concern, Anne heads out shopping, wearing sunglasses as if to shield her identity. She samples the blood from a freshly packed piece of meat at the store, and in a bizarre turn of events, ends up buying only the blood. Back at home, she drinks the blood from a glass and then engages in an energetic dance and redecorates her home on her own. Her ability to effortlessly lift a massive sofa by herself leaves no doubt that she's now gained superhuman strength. While taking a bath, she notices the bite mark she received at the old gin mill and begins to put pieces of the puzzle together. During this time, Jacob confides in his brother Bob about Annie's increasingly surprising strange behavior ever since she met with Tom. Bob advises him to confront Tom, suggesting that Jacob might find him hanging around the old gin mill. That very same night, Anne encounters the shadowy figure that seems to be exerting control over her actions. Disturbingly, it compels her to act out inappropriately in front of her window until Jacob arrives and intervenes. The story takes another turn the following day when Anne visits her dentist, and during her checkup, the dentist informs her that a new tooth is actually emerging. As part of a teeth whitening treatment, treatment, the dentist uses a UV light, which unexpectedly starts to burn Anne, causing her to flee the office in a panicked scream. Meanwhile, Jacob heads to the old gin mill, hoping to find Tom, but instead, he encounters a group of local kids who urgently tell him to leave the area. And just as Jacob begins to exit, Amelia, now transformed into a vampire, suddenly appears and savagely attacks one of the kids, ending his life by biting him and draining his blood. Amelia then confronts Jacob with a startling revelation. She claims to have a new master, one who is now also with Anne. Unfazed, Jacob whips out his Bible, attempting to exorcise her, believing that she's probably possessed by some demon. Amelia, though, mocks him and threatens to kill him, but just then, the other young person interrupts, striking Amelia from behind. This gives Jacob a precious moment to escape, and he rushes back home to Anne, while the young person makes a dash for the police. One of the neighbors, sensing that Anne is in distress, comes inside the house to assist her, but he discovers that Anne is in the kitchen, where she suddenly attacks him, killing him by biting his neck and draining his blood, because she's now a vampire. And when Jacob gets home, he's horrified to find Anne standing over a corpse, drinking the man's blood and even licking up the drops that have spilled on the floor. Anne, visibly shaken, tries to explain that she's being controlled by some entity, and she reveals that the bite mark on her skin, claiming that it happened the day that she met Tom. Jacob, still in shock, assists Anne in cleaning up the blood mess in the kitchen. While they were cleaning, the doorbell rings and Jacob answers it to find Mike, the local cop, who starts asking questions. Mike wants to know if Jacob is familiar with a young woman named Eli, the girl who was at the mill. Eli had apparently gone to the police, claiming her boyfriend was murdered by a vampire, naming Amelia as the one responsible. Mike, however, is skeptical, saying that he found no evidence to support this wild claim. He suggests that Eli's account might be a hallucination caused by drugs. And to add another layer of mystery, Mike shows Jacob a church stamp that was discovered at the mill. Jacob is as puzzled by the stamp as Mike is, and during their conversation, Mike also mentions that Tom has gone missing, noting that Tom's car was found abandoned at the mill. As they were talking, chaos erupts from inside the house, and the dead body that Anne had killed starts to move as if trying to escape. But Anne manages to subdue him, causing a lot of noise in the process, and Mike, unaware of the commotion inside, apologizes for troubling Jacob with so many questions and asks him to say hello to Anne, noting that she seems to be busy with something. After Mike departs, Anne opens up to Jacob about the mysterious master, mentioning that she's only ever seen its shadows. But with each visit, the master's shape becomes increasingly detectable. Determined to rid Anne of this dark influence, Jacob suggests that they find and eliminate the master. They bury the recently killed body, and Jacob insists on going to the mill alone to finish the job. Anne, however, expresses her concerns, and she points out that they have no idea how Jacob will react when confronted by the master, who has the ability to transform into a bat. After some discussion, though, they agree to tackle the challenge together. Upon entering the mill, they encounter Amelia, and undeterred, Jacob splashes holy water onto her, causing her to suffer in pain. As she pleads for mercy, Anne holds her still and urges Jacob to end her life. When he hesitates, Anne takes matters into her own hands, and she kills Amelia and accuses Jacob of being weak. Feeling overwhelmed, Jacob retreats to his car, proclaiming that he's not a killer. He tells Anne that her choices have consequences, suggesting that her involvement with Tom and the subsequent vampiric transformation might mean that she should stay with the master. Anne fires back, accusing Jacob of blaming her for a situation that she didn't actually choose, and Jacob responds that he's crossed too many lines already and decides to leave while he still has a piece of his soul intact. That night, Jacob heads home alone, and Anne returns after hitchhiking. As Jacob sleeps, he's roused by strange noises downstairs, and investigating, he finds himself face to face with the master. When Anne gets home, she finds Jacob kneeling, a knife pointed at his own throat, and the master towering over him. The master insists that Jacob is holding Anne back from realizing her full potential, and in a chilling move, the master compels Jacob to make a small cut on his throat, releasing a trickle of blood. And overcome by her vampiric instincts, Anne lunges at Jacob but manages to restrain her bloodlust at the very last moment. She kisses him passionately instead, and they make love, leaving their relationship in a state of heightened tension and also complexity as they grapple with their radically changed lives. In the morning after their intense night, Anne is visibly distressed, her body craving the taste of blood. To help alleviate her discomfort, Jacob offers her cigarettes, which seem to calm her down a bit. Their quiet moment, though, is interrupted by a phone call, prompting them to visit the home of an elderly woman. When they arrive, they find her lifeless body, and Jacob believes that her death is the work of a higher power and makes the decision to take the body to his house. But unbeknownst to them, a neighbor spots them transporting the corpse and promptly reports it to Mike. Jacob leaves Anne at home to drain the blood of the body, while he sets out to find and confront the master once and for all. On his way, Jacob is intercepted by Mike and his partner, who discover a suitcase filled with vampire hunting gear and vials of holy water in Jacob's possession. Meanwhile, back at the house, Carol and Bob, Jacob's brother and sister-in-law, make an unexpected visit, and they were very horrified to find Anne in the midst of her macabre task. Bob draws a knife, threatening to kill Anne if she's involved Jacob in her dark activities, and at that moment, Carol, who had been waiting outside, is abducted by the master. When Anne and Bob step outside to investigate, they find Carol with her throat slashed, now a puppet under the master's control. Before they can react, the master appears and bites Bob, killing him instantly. Turning its attention to Anne, the master inquires about her deepest desires, and Anne confesses that she craves for a life of greater significance. And the master offers her a dark pact: drink its blood and never be thirsty again. But just then, Jacob arrives with Mike and his partner, who shoot the master. Unfazed, the master traps Mike and his partner, transforming the ground beneath them into a pool of blood. Anne begins to drink the master's blood, but Jacob intervenes. And with swift determination, he stabs the master and inscribes a cross on the back of its head, killing it once and for all. After the night's chaotic events, Mike and his partner agree to keep this incident off the books, and as dawn breaks, Jacob and Anne make an arrangement to sell their house and disappear from their old lives. And the movie ends on a note of normalcy as the couple share a passionate kiss. If you want to watch more creepy horror movie recaps, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment. We'll see you next time. Bye.